Then this next panel is on empower, collaborate, and orchestrate. So I want to introduce Lucy Mariappa, right here, who will be the moderator of the discussion. She is a CIO of the Year Award recipient and the winner of the CIO 100. And she's going to lead us in this next discussion. And again, please do interact and share questions again in this conversation. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being the awesome participants that you all are. So, expecting the same kind of collaboration and conversational, panel here as well. So, I'm very excited to have this distinguished panel out here. And the topic really is central to every board, every C-suite, every team, including every employee, right? Moving the organization to empower, collaborate, and orchestrate. Without this, the organization cannot exist, cannot move forward, and cannot thrive. So now that we are, on this topic, and before we dive into it, if I may ask our distinguished panel to introduce themselves, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mike Anderson. So glad to be here with each of you today, and very much looking forward to this conversation we're going to have.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tonya Phillips. I'm the Regional Sales Director for Zerto. I hail from Kansas City. It's nice to be here. It's very hot, so that's interesting. But other than that, currently with Zerto. Before that, my life has been in data center and solutions. Owned my own solutions company, and then went into data center, which gave me background for Zerto. So happy to be here today.
I have one, and it's working. Hello, everyone. My name is Russ Kennedy. I'm the Chief Product Officer for a company called Nasuni. We're one of the sponsoring vendors here at this event. We're happy to be here. Nasuni is a file data platform that helps you move your file data to the cloud. So if you don't know about us or you haven't heard about us, I encourage you to talk to myself or one of my colleagues here in the Nasuni events. We're excited to be here because this is the right audience for this type of discussion, and I think the questions are going to be really interesting, so I hope you fire away from the audience.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Binford, Director of Information Security Officer at Humana, a big healthcare company. Been at Humana for about 2 years now, come from a big tech financial services background. My focus is primarily cloud, AI, ML, and now democratizing data, so it should be an interesting discussion.
So let's unpack this, topic from three-dimensional perspective, right? Who needs to be empowered and collaborated with? What needs to happen, and how do we get there? And then, with the expertise of this panel, literally the areas of all technology areas are covered here: with security, with product, with vendor partner, and then the technology leadership as a division with us. So we can now look into the who, what, and how, as well as the technology areas as well. But before we get into that, the important question is why? Why is it important to empower, right? So the organizations and the business landscape is changing so rapidly every day, and organizations have to be nimble, adaptable, and changing quickly, and empower their employees to really have a cultural, collaborative team so that they can take decisions fast, right, and they're empowered and not held back with the consequences that will come with it. So I do have some data to share with you all. So according to the Glassdoor survey, 53% of employees would stay longer at their company if they felt more empowered. According to Fierstein, 86% of the employees and executives cite a lack of collaboration or ineffective communication as the main reason for workplace failures. And according to Harvard Business Review, employees who feel that their work environment is really collaborative are twice as likely to be engaged and stay with the organization for a long time. So now we know the why. Robin and team, thank you for getting such a good topic and assembling this expertise so that we can dive deep into it. So panel, so the question is, how do we empower the organization, right? Starting from employees, and then the teams, and then the leadership, and then the vendor partners, and from the security analysts. Only when you get it all comprehensively together do we empower an organization. So, question to you all, how do we do that?
If you don't mind, since I have the mic, I'll go ahead and start. We're about a 500-person organization spread out all over the world. We're a software development company, so we have developers all over the world, US, Europe, India, etc. To us, it's really about three things. We focus in this order on empowerment. It's all about empowering the employees first. Then it's about our existing customers and how do we make them successful. And then it's about the next customer that we're going after. So in that order, if your employees are empowered, they feel successful, they're going to do a good job for your existing customers, and they're going to find new customers to bring into your organization. So it's about those three things in that order. But it starts with the employees, and it starts with the employees on day one, the onboarding process. Regardless of their role and where they come into the organization, it's all about getting them onboarded and productive as quickly as possible.
I think about the time when, so I'm rolling back the clock 15, 20 years ago, when I was an individual contributor, and I'm thinking about all of the examples that I bring into now my leadership role. And I've seen two different vehicles talking about specifically the employees. I've seen a top-down approach, and with crisp communication, with a vision, with a strategy that everyone was able to get around and move forward with it. That's on the thumbs up side. And the thumbs down side, it was, well, do this because I said so, but I'm not going to model it. And if we're going to talk about disempowerment, that embodies this previous statement I just made. We as leaders have to understand that this is a relational situation we find ourselves in. And if we're going to pivot and move the culture from one definition to one that's much more robust, collaborative, then we have to understand we got to get that piece right. We got to model it. And without the modeling, a number of things that don't take place when we talk about how it should.
I think for what I have observed over the years is that you want people to take ownership, and that leads to more collaboration, right? They want to own a piece of what they're doing in their daily roles, right? So if you give them the ability to contribute their thought process, their ideas, you can get so much more collaborative efforts organically and more consistently than you would if you just have this demanding culture of, this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to do it, and I'm always right? So if you enable people to feel empowered, have that entrepreneurial spirit to problem solve for you, you are going to have much better outcomes, and people will want to own it, they'll want to drive it, and ultimately they'll be happier with the overall process, and they'll want to do their work, right? So.
Yeah, it sounds like we all agree in one way or another that empowering our employees is about bringing the data to them to allow them to make decisions. Where are we now, though, is the question, right? So I think when I think about democratizing data, to me that means knowing where your data is, knowing what it means, and having a clear path to access. I think today most of us in these large organizations, we're not there. We've got data silos all over the place. Our teams are in silos, so we're not collaborating. Because the data's everywhere and we don't really understand and normalize it, we can't automate off of it. We think that the big tech companies' biggest advantage is in talent density and deep pockets. But when you think about Google's and Amazon's of the world, the fundamental advantage they have over all of us is that they have systems for doing all these things. Standardizing data, making it clear how to access it, and making it clear what that data is.
Couldn't agree more about the key to empowerment is access to information. And it really does start with how are you organized? How is your business organized? Who needs to get access to a piece of data or a set of information in order to do their job? And in today's world, those organizations and those groups are likely spread out. They're likely in different locations. They're likely hybrid workers, where they're working part-time in an office and part-time from home, et cetera. But having access to data that helps them do their job is the most important thing I think you can do to empower your employees.
And to add to all the excellent points, for me as a leader, if I want to empower my team, my first thing is let them know the vision and why. Why are we achieving or why are we going after something that we are asking them to do? And then give the empowerment and the decision making of the hub to the team. But at the same time, build room for failures, right? You cannot expect them to go get it and you figure out the how without giving them the room for room for failure. But at the same time, what does that failure look like? Fail fast, fail forward, and fail intelligently. If we tried everything and we did our best and we got an intelligent data and information out of it and we failed, we got a gift as well. That's the learning for our next project. So I take empowerment that way so that everything that we do, even when we fail, we are failed forward. So now from empowerment to organizational culture. So Mike, you have a large organization with a large team, and as part of leadership role, you definitely have to rally the team to buy into that vision so that you can go after and achieve that, right? So how do organizational culture and leadership influence the employees so that it motivates them towards that empowerment, collaborative culture so that they can achieve more?
It seems like it's ironic that I'm here at this moment talking about this specific topic because I'm literally going through this right now. We had previous administration, and under previous administration, the employees did not have a voice. And when an employee doesn't have a voice, or they fear that they may be stigmatized or reprimanded, treated differently in some kind of way, then the notion of them opening up to share their ideas is squelched. So I did a series of skip level interviews across all of our education and technology division. And boy, did I get some eye-opening facts. I'm gonna unpack that part, but I do want to share this with you. The current administration does not feel any way like the previous, but because the previous was so firm in that we lead, you do what we say, and you don't ask any questions, that shut the entire process down. We have siloed teams inside of what we had. Siloed teams inside of siloed orgs, inside of this whole big conglomerate we call education tech. I'm working diligently right now now that I have the action items, to speak to the various departments, to undo these scenarios that I was quoting, to create a set of circumstances where we can talk, where they can speak freely, and get the tools consolidated to a point where they don't have to go through 5 or 6 different platforms to understand what the big ideas and what are the key factors. All of these things have to take place, plus relationship building, right? These are humans that we're asking to do stuff that are scarred. We can't neglect that. And all too often, I know from the leadership that I've come up in is everybody's not taught how to lead, and everybody's not taught how to manage. Those are 2 separate functions. So let me not get on my soapbox. Back to the top. Without the employees being enabled to share their ideas, to share their thoughts, right, there can be no collaboration. And if this is the foundation for what we're talking about, right, how do we even get to the orchestration piece that we just spoke about in the previous panel, where we're putting all of this together and driving all sorts of efficiencies across our entire org? Probably can't.
Very good point. So when I think about this topic, I think about how do you lead through inspiration? How are you inspiring your people? How are you motivating them, right? So within our company culture, we're big on collaboration, obviously, but how do you get to that point? Well, lead by inspiring your people, and that means live in their shoes, understand what their pain is, be empathetic to that pain, and how are you gonna help solve it? And you know, when I'm talking to my folks, it's like, okay, you can bring an alligator to my office, but let's hear your idea about how you think we should solve it. It may not always be perfect, right? But again, they're owning that. I wanna understand what their world is like so that we can collaborate and understand one another. So when it comes down to my team, I know their day-to-day, I know their pain, and I'm trying to help them solve it. And I even tell them, I will be the smallest role in your business or the biggest role. Tell me where you need me, tell me how I can help. And in that, I'm helping take ownership, right? I'm bought in. You can't lead from an ivory tower. It doesn't work.
With your product and each team and how to rally them in, this has to work more in a very orchestrated way.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I do want to go back to your original point, because it's about mission. It's about what is the organization there to do. And in our organization, we rally around an individual or an organization inside of our customer that made the decision to go with our technology. We're a technology organization, but we're not the most well-known technology company in the world. And we're somewhat disruptive to traditional methods of storing file data. And somebody made a decision inside of one of our customers to say, I'm gonna go with that disruptive company. Our mission is to make that person the most successful they can. And it's throughout the entire company. It's from the CEO all the way down to the individual writing a line of code, somebody testing that line of code. Everybody says, we need to make that individual that took a chance with us and our technology, make them as successful as we can possibly be. If everybody buys into that mission, you're gonna execute and deliver, and those people are gonna feel that success, and they're gonna wanna buy more from them. And then they're gonna wanna tell their friends, hey, this is a great company to go with. And that's how businesses get started, and that's how they grow quite rapidly, is because they build a network of very trusting, successful people that buy into their tech.
I don't know, but I can add more. That was wonderful.
So do we have any questions from the audience before we go on to the next line of thought? Okay, so now let's talk about the challenges. Now we know the why we have to do it, what we got to do it, and what are the challenges in actually doing that, right? So what are some of the challenges in setting up and, nourishing a collaborative, team? And how do you, reduce the risk or mitigate those risks that, come arise while we're trying to, build a team, collaborative and empower them?
There are numerous things that come to mind. I think about those business processes that have been in place for, 5 to 15 years. Person comes to work, they know exactly what they're gonna do every single day, it's by the numbers, right? They're well within their comfort zone. Now, I'm gonna step in and say, hey, we're gonna do things a little bit differently. We're gonna do this thing called process improvement, continuous improvement. We're gonna look at your whole process. We're gonna find a better way to do it. Who's in with me? Right, so in that response, that typical response, and I lived this, there's this opportunity that's there, but if it isn't packaged right, and we don't share with them, I think we said vision, I think we said mission, and help them understand how this is going to make their lives easier, then there's gonna be some trouble associated with the whole adoption process. And I'm thinking about the various types of, communications that we have now. I remember, before we had really good collaborative products, we would, be in email and we would, let's say, hey, make sure you keep the subject the exact same. Don't change the subject, because then you gotta go look at it 2 months from now. You know it's in that subject and all the attachments, right? You're not go looking through your email 2 months, but we're in a day and time where that just doesn't work. We need platforms that are, I believe last panel said this, standardized, right? Where we can go to one single source of truth, gain all of the insights that we need, all the documentation, see all the contributors, version control, and lead in with whatever it is we're going to do. All those great consumer comments.
I'm gonna jump right on that, because I think the biggest risk that we all face today, because I say we all, those of us in siloed organizations, the biggest risk we face is that folks don't know what other teams are doing. We sort of set ourselves up as an assembly line. I need to know my job and do it very well, just like we were talking about. Getting people to stretch out of their comfort zones and understand the entire value stream and where they sit in it, and what I put out to you and what you offer to me is a very difficult and challenging proposition. I think the biggest risk as leaders, especially if we've been in these siloed organizations for a long time, is that we also don't really understand the value mapping that goes in between our teams. And that means that when we come out with a mission and a vision that's supposed to be compelling and exciting, we risk coming across as inauthentic. So I think the key to mitigating that risk is really understanding the teams that you work with and what you do together before you start pushing for that change.
So to add to all these excellent points, I want to raise one aspect when it hurts the most. The tone sets at the top. And if your leadership is not courageous, empathetic, and stays on top to ensure and go through these strategies and go through these challenges and meet it head on, it's not going to dive in. So how can we empower our leaders to have courageous and empathetic leadership? When I say courageous, we've got to have the backbone to stand up and own. Whether it's going to be a success, it's not. Yes, I agree. Yeah, whether it's going to be a success or failure. And then I'm backed by the empathetic leadership, right? I'm going to be here with you. If you fail, I got your back. Do our teams know that? And if our teams don't know that, everything that we're talking about, collaboration, empowerment, everything's gone to the tree. So I would say, yes, lead from the front, all of that is great. But if you don't display courageous and empathetic leadership, everything is a backstory. So now coming on to the how. So now, dealt with what and who needs to be done. What are some of the strategies that we can accomplish both the empowerment and the collaboration so that we can orchestrate it well, right? Again, from the perspective of the teams, the leadership, individual, as well as technology. So, you'll want to go ahead?
Sure, I'll start. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great contributions from the rest of the panel, but from a how to do it perspective, there's all kinds of tools available now, all kinds of collaboration tools and platforms and ways to organize your teams such that they can leverage these tools and be wherever they want to be or be wherever they are and still work together. So that's the great thing. I mean, one of the big things that came out of COVID, I think, was that everybody got used to working that way. They got used to working through electronic tools and capabilities to do their job because they couldn't be in the same place at the same time. But what I think has emerged is the importance of having access to information and to data in a timely manner that is accurate. It's the source of truth, as Michael said. Everybody knows that this is the information that we need to do our jobs correctly. And in order to provide that to the organization, you have to invest, you have to be willing to make sure that you invest in the right set of tools and the right capabilities to ensure that people do have access to that information and that it's timely and it's accurate. Because the last thing you want to do is have somebody make a decision, the wrong decision, because they didn't have the right data, they didn't have the right information. So it is very important, especially in a distributed world, which I think most of us live in today, to invest in tools and invest in technology that's going to help you deliver the information that you need to the people that are working in your organization so they can be empowered to make decisions and do the right thing.
So I'm going to go off of observations, right? So we talk to so many large organizations, specifically within our venue that we are looking at large enterprise. And we find that so many times they aren't collaborating, they're not getting data, they're very siloed, as you mentioned. And so, when is it important to bring in resources, have tiger teams, as mentioned before? I think all these things are relevant, but it's all in the timing, right? So in our organization at HPE, we have tiger teams, right? And we use that as a tool to make sure that we're getting some outcomes and we're getting information quickly, data points, right? And then they bring that back to the leadership and they say, okay, based on X, here are our thoughts, and then how do we move forward? In addition to that, with the organizational structures that we see, a lot of times they just don't know when to bring in resources, right? Like, when do we bring in third party? When do we get these secondary opinions? Typically we say early and fast just so we can help collaborate. Is that always the right timing? I think that's dependent on the reverse timeline of your goals of your organization. But certainly getting all the information you humanly possibly can to make a good decision on the path forward. There's a lot of great ecosystem to enable that. And I think it's to every organization's advantage to research that and to have an open door to that, have an open mind to community. I mean, just look at the room here. Everyone here is doing this very thing, right? You're sharing information. A lot of times people see the vendor relationship as a hindrance and not an enabler, and that does need to shift. So, right, there is a lot of transactional partners out there, and there's your strategic. And certainly with the strategic piece, your environments are very complicated, and there's a lot of mind share that folks like us can bring to the table to say, hey, we've seen that before. We think we can help you with that, and if we can't, we know someone who can, right? So think of the bigger picture of it rather than just Zerto or a certain technology, right? Because we do want to share with you, we want to enable you.
What I find in our organization frequently across the breadth of educational services is we have a lot of managers who have never received any formal training. So just back up for a moment. We got this top-down approach. We've got sponsorship at the executive level. We pushed it down to the VP director level. Everything's rocking and rolling. Now we've got to get down to the tier where all the subject matter experts and SMEs are, and we've got these line managers who haven't been trained on how to lead. In many cases, they're doing their best, right? They're figuring it out, but in the absence of that formal training, there's some gaps. They don't know how to deal with this situation. How do I impress upon this team in a very persuasive way that we need to continue this charge that has come from the top, right? So what that tells me as a leader is there's gotta be some mentorship there. There's gotta be some collaboration with those younger leaders who are up and coming. And we've got to sort of pick them up and carry them along until they're ready to support that effort on their own.
So before we go on to the next line of thought, do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Michael, so that's one of the things that resonated a couple times. You talked about, leadership training. And one of the things I found that is not directly apparent, but it's that legal exposure that comes from some of those management, because there are some things, especially in that public sector space, that are very specific. And without that mentorship and guidance, they are on their own. But not only that, the organization will then get themselves into some compliance and even legal risk. Something to pitch to say, this is not only going to improve the business, it's going to reduce the risk. More of a comment than a question, really.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. Many of us have various regulatory models that we have to subscribe to, and annually people come in to see how we're doing. If you got someone who, again, doing their best, working their hardest to figure it out, but they don't have a good mentor, a good guide, they can be, responsible for things not taking place, and they really didn't know. Right, and I see a lot of this, even when I was in the private sector, people are responsible for programs and they haven't even been trained on the program. I totally agree.
So you talk about silos a lot, and what are some strategies that you guys use to enable cross collaboration between the silos and get people working together, because again, you mentioned communication is key, and so you're orchestrating a vision and getting that vision to all the silos and make sure they're all working towards the same thing.
Can I jump on that from the security perspective? Because maybe it's a model that works in other ways, right? So the successful security organizations that I see that are really ensuring the way they interoperate with their business segments, if you think of a large organization, typically you've got a centralized security function, a whole bunch of business lines around it. That's the organization that I work in. We're doing two things. We're busting down the data silos that we've been talking a lot about. On the security side, we've got threat intelligence, we know about the vulnerabilities in our assets, the vulnerabilities in our code. Historically, large organizations just pound you over the head with each of those spreadsheets that they pull from a database, right? We're pulling all that data together, enriching it, and building insights out of it. And then when the bridge that I'm talking about is we accomplished it through the BISO role, which is what I am, so of course I have to pitch for my position, right? We've enabled the BISOs to take the insights they're getting from this now combined, merged data and actually drive discussions with their individual business segments, because we as BISOs understand our business segments better than anybody else in security. So we're taking what we know about the business, combining what we know from the security telemetry that we pulled in, and we're actually helping build an environment where security is not just creating policies and enforcing them on you, right? We're starting to build this sort of feedback loop where, okay, how much does it hurt when, as security, I put these sort of rules on you? And then, we get that feedback back, and it gives us this really nice, it's a feedback loop that builds a relationship between us and the business. And I think building those feedback loops is critical no matter where you sit in an organization that you're trying to get two large organizations to work well together.
If I could take just a little bit of a different approach to that. In our organization, again, we're a product company and we're trying to sell technology to customers. We encourage everyone throughout the organization to know as much as they can about what our technology does and how it enables our customers to be successful. We do a lot of things like lunch and learns, where we'll have various technologists that are experts in a certain area come in and just talk about what their area is and what you need to know about what they're doing. But it's not just the product side. We have marketing people come in and say, this is our challenges, this is what we're dealing with, this is the competitive landscape that we're in, and here's how you need to think about what the competition is. We have finance talk about some of the challenges associated with managing the various financial aspects of the business, sales. Everyone has an opportunity to share with the organization what they're doing and help the organization learn, even if it's not your particular area of expertise. You can learn what other parts of the business are challenged by, and it can help you do a better job in your area.
Context is for kings, as they say.
Chris, in my case, what I'm doing right now is I'm over-communicating, and I'm doing that very intentionally. I'm saying when I meet with my executive directors and directors, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to do this over a 3-month period. I want you to make sure that you stand right alongside your line managers. I want them to check in with you on a weekly basis. I want you to bring that data back, right? So it's a continuous loop. And then I'm modeling, I'm saying in that meeting, I am going to go start doing this with that business unit. Watch how I do it, right? That's how you really get it done.
Thank you.
So let me add to that perspective by also giving an example and not just talk in theoretical terms as well. So having worked in both public and private sectors, I have found that silos and lack of end-to-end streamlined business processes, which are then automated, to be the #1 reasons for organizations lacking that growth and the ability to move forward in the light of speed that they need. And I'll give you an example. In one of my previous organizations, there was an issue which reached out to the entire C-suite, and we had a lawsuit, all of that. So now think about the major fire. And now I come in to actually get exposed to that issue. And then I learned that this affects 105,000 users, 20,000 employees, all employees, 15 departments, and literally everybody in the company, and it is on fire. So I get the various departments in a boardroom because you need a lot of people. And I witnessed everybody throwing rocks at each other, big time. And it got to boulder levels, right? The first thing to do sometimes is to know that we are hurting and to accept that we have a problem. So get our users first to understand that we do have a problem, we are a part of this problem, but we also need to be a part of the solution. Then we came together in streamlining the business processes and had all these teams there. I gave them the yellow stickies with a big Sharpie so that they don't write a whole lot in it. Tell me what your business step is. Okay, that team does
How
this.
old are these people that you give instructions? Just try to line it up.
25 to 65, right? So everybody has to put a step, and we are on the whiteboard, and each of the process, we went through, end to end, having each department put their processes. I also gave them a red sticky to say, this is my pain point. This is your steps, but it's not working for you. This is the problem that happens in this step. So we went through the complete business process streamlining, and then when we had an agreed audience with all those users, then we implemented it. It used to take two weeks to 1 month for that process for one user to happen. It reduced to 2 minutes, and it would go through the entire 15 departments. The key is streamline our business processes end to end, and then automate, but by your key stakeholders, which is down to the end user level. I would stress on that. Okay, so now let's talk about security. We have our security expert here. So, James, help us understand how do the leadership and the board and the chiefs understand the importance of security and the department and the work that the security departments do, and how do you ensure that the security departments understand the value of business and the importance of driving the business ahead?
A lot of that is fortunately accomplished by the BISO role. I'll be blunt though, this is something that we're working on, and most of the organizations that I've worked with are also working on. A lot of it's over communication. I think one gap that we're looking to fill is good metrics, like what security metrics apply to your business. You can go Google, good security metrics, and the top 10 list you get is going to be good enough for a little while. But what the board's looking for from us is how do these risks that you're talking about apply to my business? So telling that story clearly in the data is something that we're getting better at. And communicating from the ground up is proven to be pretty critical. We've also started to set up a lot of touch points between us and the business outside of the BISO role. So, we'll bring CSOC in to give a state of threat intelligence and give some context about how that applies to what's going on in our organization. And we'll bring the business to these monthly roundtables where they tell us what they're working on and sort of what, who's talking about it? You. Yeah. The financial impacts of what the business is doing, right? We've also done something pretty interesting that I think it's worth bragging about. Humana's created something called Lead IT, where you bring director and above, for a week for an on-site that goes through everything that's not IT related about the company. You've got the VP of finance, multiple VPs of finance from different business segments coming in and talking about what we're doing. We talk about how to communicate as leaders, how to be empathetic. So it's these little programs and touch points that we're investing in that are making a huge difference. And I think what we're going to see is that the story that we're telling to the board is going to get clearer, and the board's vision for us is going to come down a lot more smoothly.
Mike, I'm interrupting a little bit because I don't care if this goes on or not. You have something to say on that.
James said?
Yeah.
Well, so for me, it was a different set of circumstances. I came into the organization post-breach, right? No one else would take on the role because it was sort of egregious what took place. And I was like, hey, I like challenges, I'll do it. But to James's point, the first time that I was placed in front of the board, they wanted to understand from my vantage point what happened raw. I don't want a sugar-coated version. I want to know raw, what happened, and then what are the sequences of events that are going to take place over X number of months to address that. At that junction, they did not trust me. But as we began to report and show a decline in risk, month over month, or rather quarter over quarter, they built up risk. Now I'm a year in, and they will give me whatever I desire, human capital or financial capital, because they know I'm going to deliver. They know that I'm going to execute. So as it ties into this, when we get to this level and we have to tell stories, we have to be very careful how we sculpt our narratives. And we have to position things just as they are. And that puts us in a very uncomfortable place because it forces us to tell the truth. Well, sometimes the truth hurts and sometimes it's not received well. We have to learn to manage all of that.
So Tonya, you are an expert here with vendor partners. As CIOs, one of the things that we constantly do is build our trusted vendor partner ecosystem, right? And we have a lot of strategic and transactional partnerships along the way. So what has worked better for you, and what do you think needs to change? And how can we add value in collaborating and driving a better outcome?
Good question. I think first we define what is transactional versus strategic, right? So your run rate, server business, or I need bandwidth, that stuff happens all the time. It's not as much of a conversation, but I think what is really relevant to understand is, okay, I have this complex issue. How do I address it? And who do I need to talk to? Well, a lot of times there's a hesitance to communicate, right? Your example of a data breach, right? A cybersecurity issue. A lot of times it's embarrassing. People don't want to disclose that. They hold those cards close to their vest. I get it. But it's our job to create value, right? And we've seen this evolution over the past decade where things can't just be transactional. They have to be strategic, and you need that mind share. So something that I want to give an example of is, Barb's in the room. One of our strategic accounts in this market is American Airlines. American Airlines, big company, right? Lots of exposure, lots of complex things going on there. Wonderful people, very open to collaboration. It's embedded in their culture, right? That's game changing. Something that we do at HPD is we have these EBCs, or executive briefing centers, and it's about hearing them talk. It's not about us pitching, it's about us listening. And that's critical, right? We need to understand, what are your problems, what do you care about? If it aligns with what we can help you with, great. If not, we can mind share, we can help you get down this path with someone else, whatever the case may be, right? But it's about listening and understanding and empathizing and knowing how we can enable and help. So Barb did a great job. She went through, she learned about what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, and built a real relationship, heard them, solved, went through a lot of time and effort to make sure that they were getting the resources and insights that they need. And lo and behold, we came up with a great solution, right? And so in that, even still today, if she gets a phone call after hours, it doesn't matter when, she's gonna answer it because she cares. And I think ultimately you have to find those strategic partnerships in a community that see you, hear you, and authentically want to help you. And if you can find that place, and there's a lot of folks out there that want to do this, right? We want to help solve problems. This is the fun part of our job, right? Is helping solve problems. And if you find and identify those folks in your community that are willing to do that alongside you, you can become immensely powerful. Your time to value is huge. And I think that ultimately that's where everyone wants to get. It's just changing that mindset, right? You can't have a company culture where, oh, these vendors, they can just stay at bay. I'll call you when I'm ready. Well, how is that beneficial, right? You're not going to get a good result or a good business outcome if we are not understanding your issue and helping solve alongside you.
So to wrap up, if you have an advice that you want to leave this room with, and this question is for each one of you, what is that advice going to be?
It would be, for me, just to say, make sure that you're having an open mind to have those conversations. And there is no bad networking opportunity, right? You're always gonna learn something from one another, so just be open-minded to have those conversations and learn from one another.
I think remembering the basics, everyone, just really remembering the basics. These are relationships that have to be built. They don't happen overnight. It takes time. The typical term for this style of engagement is anywhere from 8 to 18 months, right, on average. So you gotta have someone who's in charge of this entire process from start to finish. There has to be accountability at all levels of management. And at some point, and we didn't get to unpack this, there's gonna be a whole lot of integrations and things that are gonna take place, and there's gonna be tariff points and regulatory things that come into your purview. We have to keep all of this at balance so that we can get to the finish.
Easy said, huh?
Indeed.
I'm going to say two quick things. One, we've already said it, but the key, access to information is empowering. And secondly, individuals, when they work collectively in teams, can achieve a lot more than any of them can individually. And you all know that, but it's just something to keep in mind as you go forward and organizing the teams. They can achieve a lot more than any of them can achieve individually.
Yeah, orchestration, automation, collaboration, it all starts with the data. Making the data accessible to more people, pushing that data down into your teams. It's difficult, but if you want a way to start, pick two teams that need to work together better, find out what information they need in common, open up a cloud account, build a database, put that data in there together, and start letting them work together to grab insights out of it. And then repeat that model little by little across the organization. You'll find we're well on your way to making progress.
From my perspective, wear your transformational hat and ask why. Why am I here in the role, in the position that I'm here? And how I can make that better? And how I can transform to get the results, not just, keep the tracks, train on the tracks and keep it running, right? How can I actually get that better, faster, and more empowered along with my team to the best of the entire ecosystem? That is my 2 cents on it. So now, do we have any questions before we wrap up?
Just another comment. It kind of resonates with several of the topics, but when I go out to a business unit, a director, they immediately, I say, we're not going to talk security at all.
Yes.
I want to know, what are your top 3 metrics? What do you report to the board, to your boss, the spreadsheet, whatever? What are those 3 things? Well, they know their business, right? And they want to talk about their business, and now you're talking about them, which is the most important thing in the world. So they open up. And you're like, well, okay, so that's important. How do you get to those metrics, right? And then you say, oh, so you do all these little things to get to that point. And then you go in and say, what would happen if that system or that technology or whatever was down, or Joey won the lottery? Could you still get to that metric? Oh no. Guess what? You just did a risk assessment, business continuity, a disaster recovery, it's all there, and you didn't mention the word security at all. Now, you go in and say, how can I help you make sure that that metric gets reported every month? That conversation's flipped. You're no longer a commodity. You're no longer, why do I need IT? I can go out to Amazon and get my own stuff. Now they're realizing you bring to the table value that'll help them achieve their goals, not, hey, I got this solution. I'll find a problem to fix it. Here you go. That's just it's always successful transitioning it into a conversation about them and what's important. Because IT exists only for them.
And that is so well put together. Thank you so much, Eric.
Tiffany, I'm here all week.
Honestly, why are we here, right? And what are we here to accomplish? And make it about them. I completely agree. And any other questions?
Can I have a comment?
Yes.
I love what you said, But just on the topic of how do we break down silos internally, I like what I think that one of the panels said earlier about our mission is to make our customers successful. So either it's internal customers or external customers. If we make them successful, that word's gonna spread and silos will be broken down.
So let's give them a thank you. That was a very good question.